It's working. And looks like we are live, so I can minimize this. And welcome to the 10th installment of the Here to There show. I'm very excited to have Beth Crowell. Am I pronouncing that right?
Kroll, like roll, but a kroll.
Crowell with us today. Oh, no, is it Crowell?
Kroll, yep.
Crowell, that's it. Okay.
Yep.
Well, welcome that you're here. I'm glad that you're here with us as I do a wardrobe adjustment here to my outfit. So, as usual, I'm running behind when I get to this, and I'm just trying to do anything, get things put together. So, this is the Here to There show. The intent of the Here to There show is it's a talk show, but where I interview generally my guest for Friday. Beth is going to be speaking on Friday. We're going to be talking about that momentarily. And you guys have the opportunity to ask questions and basically make inquiries as to what you'd like to know. So without further ado, I'm going to start my interview with Beth. We're going to go for approximately an hour. Then I'm going to show a video with Phil stars in, and then we're going to get back to the questions. So I just want to thank everyone that's joining us here today. And Beth, how was your weekend? How was your Thanksgiving? Where are you based out of?
So I'm in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, so a little south of you. But we had a nice Thanksgiving. We have no snow on the ground, which is very unusual for this time of year.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. We usually have snowy Thanksgiving, but this year, for whatever reason, who knows? Because we had snow on Halloween, so it just kind of decided to flip flop this year. Right. I guess for whatever reason, but it was good. And I went on my lawn, picked up some branches, threw out my back, gold star.
Oh.
So this is why I'm standing doing this today rather than sitting on my nice comfortable couch. So
okay. Yeah. So are you in a lot of discomfort, or is it?
No, it's been worse. So I'm actually doing okay. So
right on.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for being here when you're not at top of tip-top shape and whatnot. Pardon me?
Thanks for having me. This is exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, just for people to know that Beth and I go back, oh my God, hours?
Right?
Hours. We go back hours. Well, I guess, we can say days now.
It's been days. It's been days. Right.
And part of the reality that I knew of doing a talk show where I have guest speakers is that guest speakers are going to have to cancel, or things are going to come up, or just life happens. And so Beth has actually saved my bacon because she's agreed in very short notice to be my guest speaker on Friday, because my guest speaker couldn't do it, as I mentioned on that. And so Beth, why don't you tell us about your background, what you do, let us know.
Yeah. So I am the hippie banker. So I work primarily with women entrepreneurs, and I help them overcome the two biggest obstacles to opening or growing a business for women, and that's access to financing and overcoming their own self-doubt. So I come at this from a very holistic hippie perspective, but also from a true banker financial perspective as well. I am a former lender. I got my degree in economics and have been in the financial industries for close to about 15 or 20 years. And so all of my career has been primarily working with entrepreneurs and helping them get financed. So whether that was at a financial institution or a nonprofit entity that I worked for, helping businesses start and grow, it was all about accessing capital to help small businesses start and grow. Go ahead.
No.
Okay. On my personal side of who I am, not as the banker, is that from a pretty young age, I've always been interested in aspects surrounding personal development, spiritual development, psychology, sociology. I started analyzing my own dreams as an 8th grader, was reading Carlos Castaneda in high school.
Wow.
And have been in and out of meeting with therapists and life coaches my whole life, and have done a ton of work on my own spiritual development. And I saw how much that impacted my close personal relationships, which I saw as a pathway of spiritual development. And then as I started my own business, I started to see that starting a business was also very much of a spiritual endeavor. And so now what I bring to my clients is a combination of of the true financial background. I've helped people prepare business plans. I can do financial projections. I've taught in an entrepreneurial class at our local university. But I'm also deeply knowledgeable about the spiritual aspects of starting and growing a business. So those two things get married together in my business, The Hippie Banker.
We're gonna circle back to the spiritual development, but did I hear you correctly say that your focus is with women?
It is
Okay.
primarily with women, yes. And it's not that I won't work with men, because I'm absolutely open to working with men. The type of coaching I do just seems to resonate more. It tends to connect with women a little bit easier. I've had a couple clients that have been men in the past, and sometimes I think it takes a little bit of vulnerability that men maybe struggle with a little bit more, that makes it more difficult to do participate in the type of coaching that I do.
It's funny you should mention that, because there has been, I have 3 questions that I ask clients, potential clients, to demonstrate, quite frankly, that they need my services, and they're meant to honestly, they're meant to cause anxiety.
Mhm.
Because people when they hear the questions, they go, oh, that's a good question, I should know that. Oh, I really should know that. So the 3 questions are: what do you sell? Apple doesn't sell computers, it sells ease of use. Nike doesn't sell shoes, it sells lifestyle. Michelin doesn't sell tires, it sells safety. So what do you sell? The second question is, how do you know you're relevant to your target audience?
Mhm. Mhm.
And not how do you think, but how do you know? And then the last question, which is the hardest one, is, why should I believe you're doing it for anything other than money?
Sure.
And what happens is, what I've discovered is, when I pitch these questions to people, mostly, more often than not, the majority of the time, it's the men that are the ones that basically dismiss, or they opt out of the services, or potentially of my services, because they're uncomfortable with the question, and they'd rather diffuse it, or they'd rather not diffuse it, but whatever that is, send it to a different direction, or change subject.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's because of what exactly you said, is that they don't have the capacity, or they don't see the value, or I haven't built enough of a relationship with them to actually get vulnerable. And the work I do in my message crafting, you have to get vulnerable. You have to be able to say, I don't know that.
Yeah.
And so and it was often what would come out as condescending about, well, what kind of stupid ass question? And it's just like, it's a simple question. Can you not
Right.
answer the question? Because,
Right.
like,
Right.
instead of saying it's on that type of stuff. So I think a vulnerability is a major component of coaching and working with people. But do
Mhm.
you find that you find women can go there much more readily than men?
I do. So when I have consults with clients, with women, it's the conversations are generally around them opening up to me and telling me what it is they're trying to accomplish, what it is they're struggling in starting or growing their business. What I've found in the conversations with men, and then when we have tried to enter into some kind of a coaching arrangement, is men often just want to get the solution. They just
Right.
want to know how to fix this. And we hear this in close personal relationships too, is that the wife tells their husband this is what's wrong, and then husband just wants to fix it.
Men are
So
from Mars, women are from Venus, type of thing. Yeah, yeah,
right.
yeah.
So the way I coach is that it sounds so cliche, and I almost hate saying it, but it really is more just about the journey of getting there, is setting that intention for what you want, but not having to be so crystal clear on exactly the path to get there. And that's in life, that's in relationships, that's in absolutely in starting a business, is that the important thing is setting your intention so that you have that place to aim at. But it really doesn't matter exactly how you get there,
Right.
as long as you arrive. And it can come in a number of different ways. So it's not my job to tell somebody how to get there. I help them discover it for themselves.
Well, what's kind of crazy about that is, if it was a straightforward path, they would be doing it, wouldn't they?
Sure.
right? So it's
Sure.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just like what makes you, it's, we have that idea that, I'm going to go here and get here.
Yeah.
And, you learn through example that it's a very meandering path and going all over the place. And it's not that straightforward. But
Right.
but what do you think leads to that belief? And just, you got the female brain, I have the male brain, so we see the world
Mhm.
very differently from that. And I've learned that the hard way on many ways. How I see the world is not how women see the world. And if I'm
Right.
selling women's services to women, I need to ask women more than men on that. But what do you think is, why do you think men believe it's that straightforward? Is that societal? Are we hardwired that way?
I'm confident that it's probably a combination of both, because it's not every single man that I talk to that approaches things in this way. I know of men that we would be able to have conversations, and quite frankly, Luke, in speaking with you, I think you have that kind of access that you would be able to get vulnerable and really start to internalize some of those questions and do some digging around. So I don't think it's anything inherent with men. So I think it is probably very much societal. Um, and vulnerability, just that word, it invokes this feeling of having to be a little weak. Even
Yep.
though vulnerability doesn't equal weakness, it
Right.
tends to, for a lot of people, imply that. So if the standard for men, what the male image is that of strength, then for a man to become vulnerable, they have to invite in some perceived, even just self-perceived weakness. And if we don't have visions of that, views of that in our society about how a man can feel strength and weakness at the same time, then it's difficult to accept that.
Yeah, and there's, even if we just look at um, the term we're vulnerable to attack.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like we
Sure.
have our guard, like that's that when you're, well, when the president of the United, I'm not going to say it's your president, but when the president of the United States, I don't know how to say that, right? It's kind of like
Yes.
navigating that in the United States is, I've been told he's not my, and yeah, anyway.
Yeah,
But
he is
when
currently
Donald,
yes.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
when Donald Trump did get COVID, and he was actually um, in the hospital, and the concerns were, with the lack of information, is America is now vulnerable to attack because our leader in chief is guard is down, right, on that. So there is that perception, and we're not going to go down into the politics or the Donald Trump thing, but just way of an example of that, there is that perception that vulnerability is that you don't have your guard up, and you're not as ready you're not monitoring the field, you're not being vigilant about where's it going to come from, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And in my opinion, anyone that can actually, somebody who can demonstrate vulnerability has an incredible amount of strength. Because what we're talking about, this is my explanation of it, is what we're talking about is I'm opening up my armor.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to see my warts and wrinkles. I want you to see my wonderment. I
Yeah.
absolutely want you to see my wonderment. I'm all about you seeing my wonderment, but my warts and wrinkles, yeah, not so much. I don't know if I really want to open up because I'm going to say, hey, this is how I feel as a father. This is how I feel like I failed, my children in these areas, or this is how I failed by not having successful marriage, or whatever it is on that. You're running the risk when you do that somebody's going to come along and slime you. And I think that's the reason why people don't want to do it, is that they now have the inside goods on me, and they might be able to use that against me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And to be able to do that, and if people should abuse that,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
then how do you recover from that without going, I'm never gonna get vulnerable again? I
Right.
think the other thing that is, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this, is that vulnerability is also appropriate to time and place and people that you trust.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right.
It is, and that's my job. And part of my job when I'm having a consultation with one of my clients is that person needs to feel comfortable with me. The person needs to feel that they can trust me with the information that they're going to be giving to me. And it's, of course it remains confidential, and I wouldn't have a career, I wouldn't have a business if I didn't maintain confidentiality. But I also have to make sure that that person knows that I'm a safe landing. And that safe landing is something I've used in my personal relationships. I use it with my children. And I use it with my coaching clients, that this is a judgment-free, absolute safe space to land anything. And so it's not, if I bring up anything that I'm witnessing, it's not in any way judging it. It's acknowledging it for what it is.
Right. Absolutely. The thing that I've noticed, and I also have to be careful, is it me? Is it them? Is it them? Is it me? Is this idea that I'm 57, and I've noticed that men my age, maybe give or take 10 years, but definitely younger than me, and older, there seems to be less posturing with men that as you get to the other side of 40, because it's like I recall when in my 20s I was playing hockey with a whole bunch of professional males, teachers, accountants, doctors, all white collar, and what was and everyone was much older than me. Like I was one of the youngest players. I was also the worst, but that's something else. But I was one of the youngest, and what we didn't see on the ice was bad checks, fighting, any kind of conflict, because the men had nothing to prove on the ice.
Yeah.
Right. And the ones that actually got into it were something, because they'd proved their worth in their career, their vocation. They knew where they stood. They had that. And it was the first insight as to being around, hanging out with men who were not going into that, quite frankly, and I'm going to swear here, bullshit male mentality about what we do, how we connect with them, how we bond, how we endorse bad behaviors from within each other by acquiescing and not keeping our mouths quiet, or by keeping our mouths quiet on that. But I did notice that on the other side of 40, on this side of 40, and definitely on 50, there is a bit of a different approach. There's a softer, there's less posturing, I guess is the word. Have you ever noticed that, or is that something that's...
So you're saying as men age, there's less of that posturing that has to occur?
Yes, I would think so.
Yeah, and it fits what. So my coaching practice is based on Richard Barrett's evolutionary coaching model, which essentially you go through these 7 stages, or the idea is you go through these 7 stages of development. And one of the stages you go through is getting more intrinsic value rather than what's external from you. So it's that you value yourself based on who you are, and it's not based on anything anybody. You're not trying to get your value from anybody else. So, and this just happens on natural evolution of an individual's soul.
So Luke's opinion of Luke is more important than Beth's opinion of Luke.
It's where it's your value. So so you don't need me to tell you what your value is. You know what it is, just as much as you're alive. If somebody were to come up to me and say, "Hey Beth, you're dead," clearly I'm not. And I know this. If as much as somebody was telling me that, I know I'm alive. And that's so you can kind of use that same idea with value, is that I've had enough experiences. I've learned enough to know what my value is. And that just takes experience, and it takes education. And that just takes time to build. So generally, if you are open to new experience, and if you are willing to learn new things, you are going to have more, your value is going to come more intrinsically than outside of you. So it makes complete sense that as you'd age, you'd have less to prove, because you're not constantly seeking that. And the other thing that goes along with that too is that we as we age, we move away from our families, our families of origin. Then we start creating our own families, and we lose all those many of our friendships from when we were younger. So there's this stage where we're kind of really we're individuating. So we become true individuals, that we need less outside of us, and we start to turn more inward. And then it's what's interesting is it tends to then evolve out from there, that as we get older again, our families get bigger and our friendships and our circles get larger again. So it's this kind of natural evolution, but you go into these later parts of your life much more solidly placed.
Right. Right on that. It reminds me, and I've mentioned this, I can't remember which of the 140 webinars I've done, but I do mention this on a regular basis. And are you familiar with Carl Jung's Afternoon of Your Life versus the Morning of Your Life?
No.
So of course, you know, Carl Jung, contemporary of Sigmund Freud, collective consciousness and everything on that. He termed the coin that we live two lives. We have the morning of our life, and then we have the afternoon of our life. And the morning of our life is about accumulation, getting established, doing. More is better.
Yeah.
More is more on that. And then we get get on the other side of 40, approaching 50, and then typically what will happen is our parents start having health issues. Maybe they're dying. Our aunts and uncles are somehow, they're transitioning off the planet, they're dying, that kind of stuff. And our mortality kind of smacks us in the face. And it's kind of like, okay, so that's my fate, not too far down the road. Maybe I have less years in front of me than behind me, or I have more years behind me than in front of me, type of thing. And there is this real sense of going, okay, I have the ex-wife, I have the wife, the ex-wife, I've got the 2.3 kids, the vacation property, my career, I have all the toys.
Yeah. Yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah. What else do you need?
Yeah, like on that.
Right.
And I think that what dovetails into this is is midlife crisis, where people wake up one day, there's this line behind them that they somehow crossed. They don't know when they crossed it, but they look at themselves in the mirror and they see someone who looks very different than what they remembered them by. And then the great reckoning comes up, where it's just like, is this what I signed on for?
Yeah.
Is this really what why is this all here? And I think women who get a degree, then get married and raise the kids, have, in their 40s, it's like, okay, I've served my family. They may or may not be in a good relationship. And it's just like, why am I doing all this? What's the purpose of all this?
I asked myself that question, and that's why I'm here.
Oh, is that right?
A couple things lined up. So as I had mentioned, I was a commercial lender. I had worked for a nonprofit for about 10 years doing economic development finance for small and startup companies. And then I moved to a financial institution for 2.5 years. And the first trigger for me is that I did Clifton Strengths Finder, and my top 5 strengths for leadership had nothing to do, no applicability whatsoever to my job as a commercial lender at that bank. None. I couldn't use.
Was that hard? Was that hard to believe? Did you know that there was a disconnect?
Yeah, I knew there was a disconnect. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I was divorced at the time, and then I met my now husband. We got married. A couple months into it, I started looking at our accounts, and it's like, shit, we don't need this. We don't need all of this money. I mean, my husband's a professor. Here I was a commercial lender making more money than I had ever had before, and we didn't need it. I was happy, except for my career. So I asked myself, what am I doing this for? I don't have to do this. Why am I doing this? And so we made the decision to quit my job. I didn't have any clients. I had no prospects, to find work that I'm truly meant to be doing, and something that I really it's an alignment for me.
And your husband supported that fully?
Yes.
There's a lot of women listening to that going, oh my God, how lucky is she?
I know. There's many women that I talk with that don't have that same kind of support. I am truly blessed. And it is one of the things that I talk about in my mindset class is about that, specifically about who's on your team, who is on your spiritual team. And if you have a partner that's not on your team, that's going to be a real struggle. It's not a loser. It's not a no can do, but that's going to be a real problem.
Some extra layers. There's some extra layers that you're going to have to navigate and deal with on that.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm curious if you feel comfortable sharing this, because
Sure.
you know, if you're not, that's absolutely fine.
Mm-hmm.
But where was clearly you're out of alignment for what you were meant to be doing as a vocation?
Yep.
Okay, on that. Like, you didn't start down the path going, I'm going to eventually hate this and I'm going to quit. You went down the path because that made sense.
Mm-hmm.
What was it about your current situation that meant that compelled you to do not necessarily about face, but a right turn?
Yeah.
Like, what was that aha, that awareness? Because I think that'd be very curious to know about that come to Jesus moment where it's going to be, okay, this can no longer stand. Because we have that. When we have that, we're going to do it till we can't do no more. When we have that, then the decisions made internally to say, that must have been really hard. I had no other choice. It wasn't hard. There was no other choice for this. So what did you see differently that compelled you to go, okay, because you were living the dream, you had lots of money, you had kids, you had the husband supporting, more is better, right? And you're going, yeah, no. So was there one thing or was it many things?
You know, realizing how out of alignment what my natural skills were with what I was doing was one thing. So knowing that I could use those skills in a much different way to actually help people. I knew that going into this job was going to be a struggle for me because I had come from the nonprofit world where we were giving low interest financing to businesses that were struggling to get funded or needed gap financing to, you know, create the jobs, expand the tax base, do all this kind of feel good work. And then when I went to the financial institution, that feel good work was kind of gone.
Soulless. Do you feel?
Yeah,
it
felt
somewhat
very,
soulless?
very empty. And I started working at the bank probably a month before Trump got elected.
Okay.
So I was not only in an industry that felt a little empty for me.
Yeah.
Then the whole world kind of changed for me that day.
Okay.
And I was surrounded by a lot of people that didn't feel the same way as I did.
So a real disconnect, like a very like not like this. We're talking actually,
it was
not beyond a bad fit.
Yeah, it was. And you know, I wasn't finding the success that I thought I should be having. I did not have the right mindset for it. And the things that I knew I needed to do in order to be successful, I did not want to do. And I knew those things were going to be a challenge for me, and I did not want to do it. In the businesses that I really wanted to work with, I could, but you know, with multi-million-dollar loan goals ahead of me, I can't be just spending all my time financing a small shop that needs 10 grand.
Right.
So it just, and I had this idea that I would have the ability to maybe climb up the ladder and then maybe have some kind of an impact at a leadership level. But once I got to the bank, it was pretty clear that that wasn't going to
happen. My ex-wife is a lawyer, and what she would say, and she's a contractual lawyer, and she's very good at what she does. I personally think she's probably twice as good as most of the men that she works with because if she's a woman in that industry. And what she said is there's only one more boys club from law firms, and that's banks. That's banks. It's just like they're through and through a boys club, even more conservative, even more established within that. So yeah.
It was tough. And then I ended up, one of my clients was a life coach, and then I hired her, and she helped me work through the process of knowing that I wanted to do something different, knowing that I was interested in life coaching to get me to actually quit my job.
So, you know what I find is lacking, or what, sorry, lacking. When I hear people, when I've talked to people in the past and they've shared the story about that they have to do this kind of right turn in their career on that's often predicated on health. Well, Shomo, who introduced us.
Yeah.
He said this publicly on my, because he was a guest speaker. Shomo, Shomo did a webinar 6 weeks ago on LinkedIn, Taming the Beast and whatnot. Outstanding talk. If you want to know anything about LinkedIn and their metrics, then you can go back to my other Here to There shows on YouTube, and you'll be able to see it there. But it was, his doctor literally said, you can't continue. It was a forced. Wow. It was a forced career change.
Yeah.
And on that, and that's usually, and that's what I was wondering, if sometimes that, we're compelled to make a choice because there really is no choice.
Yeah, I see. Sure. Yeah. Well, and I mean, so in the time span of 5 years, I left a marriage after being married for 13 years, and the marriage wasn't like awful. I wasn't being abused, or it just wasn't the right marriage for me. So I left a marriage. I then quit a job that I had been at for 10 years that I loved, but I knew that there was a certain space I could get to, and that was it. To then start a job that I wasn't really sure I was going to like, and it turns out that I didn't. And then I met my husband and got married to him after only not knowing him for 9 months.
Okay, yeah.
And then I quit my job to start a business without any clients or prospects. So within the space of 5 years, I had some pretty significant changes. And looking back at, actually, somebody had asked me, how did you make all those changes? And asked me, weren't you afraid? And I said, at any one of those stages, I really wasn't afraid. And that's kind of the genesis of how I created the mindset plan. Is because I had to think about, well, how was it that I was able to make all these changes and take all these perceived risks? And it was based on that plan.
Very cool. Very cool. Were there any demons that you had to slay, or like a lot of?
Yeah. And that was another of the realizations, is that I had spent probably most of my time in spiritual development has been with the focus of building better relationships for me, with romantic relationships, family relationships as a mother, realizing that close personal relationships are an absolute gold mine for spiritual development. And so that was kind of the lens that I had been using for myself to grow. And so spent years and years and years focused on that. And then when I started my business, and I should back up, before then, I've always been the type of person that people come to me to air out their dirty laundry, to talk about problems. That's always just been something about me. In fact, I would tell people the favorite part of my job at the bank is I had 3 coworkers that would essentially come in, talk to me once a week, and talk with me about their problems, and we would talk through it. So I had always had that part of me. And so, I had always been talking to people about all of these, my friends or just coworkers, about these things that I was learning that was helping me become better in relationship and grow. When I started my business, I realized, like, holy shit, I really have to put all these in place now to start my business, because there is no certainty and it's riddled with fear. And so that's how I realized that all of the stuff that I had taught myself over the years by reading and introspection and solo retreats and, you name it, I had to apply all of that to starting and growing my business. And I still am. I'm still learning. There's things that I learn every day. But I think that's what makes me a good coach, is because I'm constantly trying to learn more. And I feel like the more I can learn about how I tick, why I am the way I am, my own spiritual journey, that makes me a better coach for my clients.
I had the opportunity 7.5 years ago to go to California and see Brendan Bouchard, and he's in the expert space and the guru, and he's had Tony Robbins on his stage. I think he's been on Tony Robbins' stage, and I like his content. I saw him twice in 1 year, and one of the things of the many things that resonated about his foundations or his fundamental principles is that you have to be a lifelong learner, and you have to know more than your clients, and you always have to be learning, because if you're not learning, if you're not applying yourself, if you're not growing, then what use can you be for your clients? So there's also something, I think, disingenuous about not practicing what you preach, especially in the coaching space. Like, we expect English professors to be able to write good prose. We expect doctors not to smoke. We expect bankers to be able to balance their checkbook. There is these kind of things, right? But there is something about coaches that that I think we have to lead by example and show that. And there's many that it's almost like a fitness coach that is morbidly obese. It just doesn't quite pass the smell test, right? And no criticism, but there is that, it just doesn't, it kind of goes, it catches me here, I don't buy it, I don't believe it, right?
Yeah. And I think that, sometimes that feeling of needing to reach this level of perfection holds people back from taking these types of steps or these types of leadership positions, because they feel like they have to have it all figured out and be that expert before they're able to share what they know with somebody else. So that can freeze somebody. And I'm sorry if you can hear my dogs barking. So yes, it is important to practice what you preach, but I guess it depends on what it is you're preaching. So when I talk to my clients, it is about teaching them the things that I've learned along the way, but that it's all about growth, and that you really never have anything completely figured out. I mean, I always think about, like, with my kids, I remember as they go between, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months. And just as soon as you feel like you get like, oh yes, I got this figured out, good nap schedule, good routine, it'd be done. We'd be like, it'd be over. Yeah. And in fact, I was having a conversation on LinkedIn this morning with some people I know that you don't, everybody gets into positions where they don't know something, but just because you don't know everything doesn't mean that you don't have anything to share.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's this idea, I love this saying, and I didn't really quite get it when I heard it in my 20s, but the older I get, the less I know.
Yeah.
Or the older I get, the smarter my parents become.
Right. Yeah. So I think it's I don't ever want to have it figured out. I don't ever want to have it figured out, because then what's the point?
Yeah.
I don't know what the point of it is if I'm done figuring it out. I always want to be figuring it out, and it's fascinating. I find it fascinating. Right.
Well, it's that joie de vivre, right? It's that embracing life and moving forward on it.
Yeah.
So we kind of talked about what gets in men's way of being able to, sometimes get help. It's vulnerability. They want an answer for a direct line. This is like, it doesn't work that way. So, there is that kind of instant, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. Yeah. I did hear this one saying, and it's a bit crass, but where will men spend money on? Where will men spend money on getting paid or getting laid? So if I can make more money, I will take the training.
Yeah.
And if I can do better with women, I will pay out of pocket. But there is this kind of inherent resistance. So those are some of the things about, the psyche, the makeup of I think minimally the North American male. I include Canada in that. I would say Europe to a certain degree of that. That's about as far as I'm going to go. But what do you think is some of the mindsets of a woman that doesn't somehow, they don't help themselves, or they shoot themselves in the foot, or they're their own worst enemy?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the issues that is pervasive with women entrepreneurs is that it's that whole idea of if you can't see it, you can't be it. So there are way more examples of, and visible examples of men in business, as men starting businesses. In particular, you get into the tech industries. There are so many more examples of men doing in these types of positions than women. So if we're not showing our daughters, or if I'm not showing my daughter that this is even an option, it doesn't even come into her psyche. She doesn't even realize that this is something that she can do. So I think a part, and to speak of the networks that men often have, that women are now starting to have more access to and creating their own networks. But the network, I mean, holy crap, you go to a chamber event. I don't know if Canada has Chamber of Commerce.
Yep.
You go to chamber events, and it's all guys.
Yeah.
There's so many. And so that's one of those real traditional old school type of networking groups, is the chambers. And so there are more, like, and I'm involved with some organizations in the state of Wisconsin and Minnesota, where they're trying to create more of those ecosystems for female entrepreneurs, but there just isn't that same kind of support, or the generation upon generations of men that have created these businesses, and then the sons just automatically think that they can do it, where women don't quite have that depth of history to rely upon. So I think there's that. I think a lot of it is that one of the less, well, it is societal. Women's value is often weighted in how much we give.
Yep.
How much we sacrifice, how much we do for our kids, or we do for our spouses, or we do for our families. We do, give. You hear about, oh gosh, Jane she's such a gem. She does everything for her kids. And, our value is in how much we give. Starting your own business can feel selfish, because this is something that we as women are doing for ourselves. But this is for me. This is going to take time away from my spouse, take time away from my kids, take time away from the more than half of the household duties. It's going to impact the family, perhaps financially. So it's seen as something very selfish. And when women's value is seen in what we give, and here's something we're doing that could potentially be viewed, or we're told that it's incredibly selfish, how the hell do you overcome that?
Right, because the selfish cloak is thrown on women is, I think it's, we men have a curse, but I think that's the curse that women have, because women are seen as the bastions of sensitivities and the gatekeepers of morality, right? And and if anyone just disagrees with the gatekeepers of morality, just look at infanticide for mothers versus fathers, and just look at the backlash from society. It's far worse when a mother kills her child than when a father does, because there's that kind of that duty of care, or whatever you want to say that. Are you familiar with Sheryl Sandberg's book Lean In?
Yes.
Okay, so she talks about, so for those of you that don't know, that Sheryl Sandberg was, am I pronouncing your name right? Sandberg, yeah. So she was senior in Facebook. She was senior in a couple other places. She did some very interesting work with the court system. I don't recall everything that she had done, or the banking system, not the court system. Anyway, she talks about the fact that, and there's been backlash on this quote, because people are saying, well, where did you get that stats? They're actually saying those stats don't exist, or they couldn't find them. But the idea that a man needs to be 50% to do a job for him to apply for work, where a woman needs to be 80-90% certain. What would do you have what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the statistics that I know about women in entrepreneurialism is that, like, I don't know if it's like 60 to 70% of men feel confident that the business that they start will be a success, where for women it's only like 30%. So it is this confidence, which is, access to financing and overcoming self-doubt are the two biggest challenges that women face when starting or growing a business. So it is an absolute recognition of that. I don't believe that it's anything inherent. And I just, as I was talking about not having these networks and not having a history, I think there's a lot of societal impacts on that. But I think I don't think it would be a shock to anybody to understand that women coming into starting or growing a business are coming at it sometimes from a little bit of a step behind, because there is that confidence factor that has to be overcome. And of course you could think about with men, well, maybe there's overconfidence, or the bravado and the whole idea perhaps of even you just think it so much, and then you think, I can't think of exactly what that is, but where you just do it until you believe it. Fake it until you make it.
Fake it till you make it. That's right. That's right. Fake it till, yeah. Well,
fake it till you make it.
Yeah. And there, I have a couple different thoughts on this, and you said something, you touched on something I think significant, and that I'm going to talk about, or I put it in the category of expectations. Mm-hmm. Whereas it's kind of expected that the son's going to take over the business, or they're going to move forward, the kind of thing, right? Where, we're really not that far away from, well, shit, in Canada, it was only in 1984 that women had the right to charge their husbands with rape.
Oh,
right. Yeah. That's not that long ago that women were still expected to put out whenever the man, and they had no recourse if they were sexually assaulted by their husband, right? Yeah. So we're really not that far. Mm-hmm. As to how we've moved away on that, whatnot. Mm-hmm. But it kind of reminds me of when I used to supervise youth workers, and I used to supervise people that worked within families and whatnot. And a question I would ask them is, when they had actually a designation of a degree after they went to high school and whatnot, and throughout my adult life, I would ask people this, is like, when did you figure out you're going to go to university? Mm-hmm. And many of them said it was never an option. The expectation is, I'm going to university.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Right. It's not an option. It's just like you're getting post-secondary. It's probably going to be a degree. So the idea that they're going to succeed in school is not the question. It's not even a question whether you're going to succeed and you're going to do this, right? And if we take that kind of lens on with women about, if they're, because it's really, I believe this to be true, that our values and principles and beliefs are established 3 generations before us. So it's our great grandparents' values on alcohol, drugs, sex, religion, politics that influence us today. So because that's carried on to our grandparents, and then our parents, and then on to us, and we will do that with our children. So we will put those expectations out there. But there is this, so it's not that far where we still had housewives as domestic engineers. Right. And that was, and what really is probably driven that for not being is just there's not enough financially, it's not sound enough that you can do that, where you can have one income, right?
Yeah.
I know that when I stayed home as a parent for 5 years, it was purely based on earning potential of what my ex-wife was making versus what I'm making. And I actually had no problem staying home because I was never in it for the money.
Yeah.
I worked in human services, and it was just like, it's not about the money, it's about making a change within society. So staying home made the most sense because of my background. At that point, I'd spent 10 years in residential treatment homes with children 11 and younger. These are kids that could not go into foster care because they had suffered too much abuse and neglect.
Wow.
So they actually had to go into a treatment facility where we assessed them, and then we decided and then a smaller treatment home and that kind of stuff, right? So there is something about a point of entry as to how you're going to advance, what your expectations are. But the other thing that I think makes it equally bad, or adds to the mix, is, one man's assertion is another woman being a ball-breaking bitch. Right?
Right.
And God forbid the male ego ever be bruised. God forbid the male ego never, just even gender studies, how women sit versus men.
Yeah. Yep.
we're out there taking up all the space, whereas women are keeping, the kind of stuff, right?
Yep.
So there's many things going on with that. I think that throw into the mix as to what's
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Alison Armstrong, the PAX program?
No.
So the PAX program is what she basically it's predicated on a few ideas, and it's PAX is PAX,
Okay.
and what she talks about, and she actually, I think she gives men a bit of a pass, quite frankly, but she's all about saying to the women, you know what, you need to take responsibility. You need to stop castrating men. You need to stop doing this. And we need to recognize that because a man doesn't see the world the way you do doesn't make him wrong. That the fact that there's some good reasons why he's stepping over the clothing that's on the floor that needs to be in the washing machine, or doesn't see the garbage. These are the things that women complain about. He doesn't see the garbage. He walked right by the garbage doing that, right? Yeah. And she does talk about about genetically being wired. That goes back to being on the Serengeti, when the man's job was to protect the tribe or to get supper. And often you did that by yourself.
Sure.
Right. And it's just like, it's up to me to get gazelle for this week, or make sure that no one comes along and takes our resources, whatever on that. Where the suggestion is that in the hunter-gatherer groups that the women were staying in, there was more collaboration, talking to others. And how that translates into today is that men are hardwired to think, well, we can figure it out. We actually think we can figure it out. It's like, I don't need to read the instructions. I don't need to ask directions. I can figure it. And of course, we often don't, very, very often that. But it's this idea that that's our default.
Yeah.
Conversely, if a woman runs into a problem, she sees that as an opportunity to build relationships.
Sure.
Where men see it as, oh, I have to ask for help. And where do we go for help? We go for help to guys we trust, or people that we've seen solve the problem. I need a new roof. My neighbor just put his new roof on. I'm going to go talk to my neighbor because he was there, right? Type of thing. So part of the whole premise of it is that both genders get pissed off when the other gender doesn't see the world that we do, and we don't get why it's not that way, right? But it is there's from an evolutionary point of view, the man has one task on his mind. That's why he doesn't see everything.
Sure.
On that. So it was a different take on how to actually see the genders and how we interplay with each other.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really good, it's some of that really good base knowledge that helps inform why we do things that we do. And then it's up to us to be aware of it.
Right.
And then if we don't like it, then we can choose to do something about it, or we don't. If there's something that I don't like about what my spouse is doing, I have to make sure that he's aware of it, and then I have to communicate it the best way that I can.
Right.
So, it's so knowing these things isn't, passed off as some excuse for bad behavior. Well, it's just how I'm hardwired. It helps you understand, just as like doing family of origin therapy or doing any kind of spiritual or personal development work. It helps bring awareness to it. And then if there's something that you want to change, you can't change it unless you're aware of it. So it's just a piece of that base that gets built.
Very cool. Let me check the time here. Oh, okay. We're coming up to the top of the hour, and what we're going to do in 3 minutes is I'm going to show a video of Barebones, where Barebones Communications actually started, and with my good friend Phil. And I'm just trying to think of what other things I had meeting before we do that, because I want to do it at the top of the hour. Why don't you tell us about what we can expect on Friday from your presentation at a high level and whatnot, and then we'll transition to the second hour.
Sure. So the name of my workshop is called Creating a Mindset Plan for Your Business. So it gives you basically a framework to determine what your mindset is and how to go about affecting it if you want to change something about it. Because the idea is that there's so much advice on how to start a business and create. I've written business plans, I've reviewed, I can't tell you how many business plans that talk about marketing or your sales and who's your ideal customer and running through every single piece of the business. But what the business plan really misses out on, which is a vital piece, is you as the owner and what you bring to the business. And it's either you're gonna bring something good or you're gonna bring something that's gonna take away, just like in a relationship. So the talk that I'm gonna be doing on Friday is taking a traditional business plan, the sections of a traditional business plan, and moving them to a mindset business plan. And then we'll go through each one of the sections. We'll give you some time to think about what you may put into these. And the kind of the nice thing about it too is that the genesis for this was not in my entrepreneurial life, but it's just in my personal life. So even if you don't own a business or you don't want to start a business, you can still use these exact same pieces as a mindset plan.
It's I'm going to make an analogy here, but something I find what I find interesting is that when consistently what I hear about people with MBAs is when people are talking about people with MBAs, like business owners, it's they don't know what the hell they're talking about. They're all school learned, right? There's nothing possibly that they could bring to the table. And I find the ones that are the most threatened or not threatened, the ones that are the most critical are the ones that have no post-secondary education. So I kind of think there's a bit of a bias there on that. But likewise with business plans, there's I hear it's something you have to do, but as many people go, it's not worth a fart in a mitt. So
right.
So there is this cognitive dissonance I have with the idea of a business plan, and I've never written up, and then maybe that's why I'm not more successful than I am. But like it's kind of, there seems to be really these very different thoughts about that. It's really a fool's errand, but so many businesses or so many lenders are saying we're not touching you till you have it. Now I know that's you have to demonstrate your what you've done. You've put some time into it and done the work on that. But do you have any thoughts about this kind of two camps about business plans are worthwhile and worthless?
Sure. Yep. So I didn't even write my own business. I didn't even write a business plan. I didn't take the time to go through and write all of that. I think it depends on what kind of business you're starting and how much you actually know about your business. Because what a traditional business plan does is it forces you to do a lot of research and really understand deeply about who your target market is. How are you going to reach them? Are they going to buy it? How are you pricing it? And just it really could potentially expose all of the potential weaknesses in your business. And like you said, if you're going to get financing, if you are a startup business, you're probably going to need to write a full business plan.
Okay.
But if it's something where you don't have to get X amount of dollars in sales right away, and this doesn't have to hit the ground running and kind of happen organically and naturally and figure it out as you go, then you probably don't need a plan.
Okay. Okay. So because there's this kind of emphatic you have to, because your business is going to be suck if you don't, and that. Okay. So we're gonna swing back to this. Let's. I want to show my breaking video. This video today is 76 seconds long, so it's not a big commitment out of that. And again, there's going to be a skeleton, so if people are freaked out by skeletons, just for you to know, and just let me know if you. I think I have the sound worked out, but let me just do this. And nope, that's not what I want. It didn't. Hold on here. Okay, let me stop sharing and do a new share. Okay, one more time.
Welcome to Bare Bones Videos. I'm Luc Bouchard, and this is my co-host, Phil. Phil, are you feeling a bit off balance? Or like, I don't know, I'm feeling like I'm leaning or something. Anyway, what's our quote today, Phil? It's by Mr. Known. That would be unknown. Holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Yes, I certainly like this quote, Phil. And your response to this is? Don't ruin a good today by thinking about a bad yesterday. Let it go. All right. If you have a favorite quote, send it to Phil and he will send you a picture of he and I. Also, if you like this video, please hit like or subscribe to my YouTube channel. You take care now. Thank you.
All right, so these shenanigans were brought to you by a guy with too much time on his hands. Too much time on your hands. The weird shit you'll come up with. So the interesting thing just about that, and as some of you know who have seen this before, the intent of the videos was to actually try and have engagement and try and do something a bit different than I'm a coach, blah, blah, because that's what I was doing at the time. And I set the camera up where it was really, I made it at an angle, but it didn't look that way actually from the video. It didn't look like we were off, we were askew on that. So anyway, that's what that was about. And I think I have 76 of those videos, and very soon I start employing a green screen. So you'll see a bit of a background on that. But anyway, thank you for indulging me. I'm trying to get as much life as I can out of those videos. So we are now into the second hour of the Here to There show, and I have questions we can keep asking. I can keep asking questions, but I'd rather have questions from the audience. If you guys have any questions for Beth, that would be great, and then we can go from there. And so, and preferably if you could turn on your audio and ask your question, like unmute yourself and ask it, that would be better. And so, does anyone have any questions?
I have a question. This is Pat. Hi. You've done an admirable job so far, I will say. It's very interesting. I'm just wondering if you have a typical day and if you think that it will be different after all the COVID stuff is out of the way and we're back to it. And what you think that will be that might be any different.
Yeah. I'll answer your second question first, is that things will be different in that I'll be getting out to do networking things. So there's this organization called 1 Million Cups that we have in Eau Claire that's around the world actually, that I used to go to weekly and be surrounded by a bunch of entrepreneurs and learn these events and, learn about people's businesses. So things like that, or just other events where I'm just getting out and talking to more people in person. That's what I foresee as being different. And that's changed for me when, like, a typical day for me, I try to segregate my coaching days, Monday, Tuesdays, and Friday mornings, so that I have my Wednesdays and Thursdays and then Friday afternoons to do anything else that I need to do for the business or want to do for the business. So some days I have back-to-back coaching clients for majority of the day. Other days I have time to do the learning and reading that I need to do. I also do a lot of writing. In fact, I've just finished up a book about creating a mindset plan for your business, and I've got an idea for another book on the way. So I want to do a lot of writing. And then just the typical running of your business stuff, balancing the books and making sure that I'm on social media and all that kind of technical stuff. So I'm anticipating once we're out of COVID lockdown, that I'll have less time to do some of that stuff because I'll be out networking more.
Thank you.
I wonder about the, what I like about your question, Pat, is that it kind of gives me back thinking about these things about bricks and mortars. And do we need bricks and mortars as much as we did before? Yeah. Like, because in essence, what we're doing is that we have we have our where we live, and we have generally where we go and work.
Mm-hmm.
And not me, I've been doing this for 7 years, and I didn't know I've been self-isolating for 7 years, but that's something else altogether, right? But yeah, I think it's going to call into question this whole idea of, do we need, why, we have schools that sit vacant for, in all intents and purposes, over 3 months a year, with holidays and everything on top of that. That's and especially in Canada, keeping those heated in the winter, right? That's not cheap. But I mentioned my children's mothers. They have 3 stories of a brand new highest building in Edmonton that they were in a year before they moved in, and now they're not using it.
Yeah.
Or they're using it minimally. And one of the issues is they have, riding the elevator, it takes an hour to get to because of how many people they have to accommodate to ride the elevator, so that there's that social distancing, and like she's like definitely north of 600 billing per hour. So, that's not a good use of her time, that kind of stuff. So I wonder what this would have been like, the whole COVID thing, had we not had the interface that we do with the technology.
Yeah.
Had this been 15 years ago, like just the infrastructure to carry the signals wasn't as developed as it is now. And I think that it would have looked a whole lot potentially worse 15 years ago, because we didn't have the technology to do the interfaces. Had we known to buy in Zoom stocks, that would have been a good thing, right? Right on that. Yeah. So I do think that there's going to be a leveling about what we're starting to redefine what we think we knew about people's work ethic. And the whole reason why people couldn't work at home was because they won't really produce. They won't really get the job done, because there's no one over there to watch them, type of thing. And I haven't certainly heard, and maybe that's going on, but I haven't heard that that's as much of an issue as people expected on this. So I think it's going to be this new definition of what it looks like to be at work. And I actually don't feel like I'm missing interactions with people, because I do so much of it 4 days of the week, and going very soon 5 days. No, this week 5 days, I'm doing events on a regular basis. So do I like spending my evenings by myself, not doing anything when my kids aren't here? No, it's not good. It's not fun. I do miss being able to go to bars to watch hockey, because I don't have cable. I miss watching football, which I CFL, the Canadian football, not American football, because we didn't have a season this year. But yeah, I think it's going to be I think there's going to be a definition of, do we have to have businesses that we have to go to work anymore, and for what reason?
Mm-hmm.
Why do we need that? I do also wonder about the toll of people's mental health, and what's going to be the outcome of that. I'm not sure if there's any stats out yet. I know that alcohol consumption has gone up greatly. The snack food industry has gone up greatly on that. People are gaining weight. They're drinking more. They're probably smoking in Canada. They're probably smoking more marijuana, because it's legal here, type of stuff. Not that it's not in the States. I know it is in some of the states on that, but at a federal level, it's all legal.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are the things. And the other thing I'm really looking forward to hearing is the social scientists say, this is what we learned about ourselves when we went through COVID, and we never saw that coming.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to those. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks a lot for your question, Pat. That was really appreciate your participation in that. Scott, do you have a question for us? I put Scott on the spot every now and again. Are there any other questions that we have? Because I will continue to ask Beth questions. What I will expect is that people will let me know if they want to talk through the chat, which I haven't even been actually monitoring, because there's nothing in there. So I'm going to ask questions, since people are wanting me to do that. Can you talk? Can you give a and I didn't tell you I was going to do this, so I maybe put you on the spot. But can you talk about a scenario where you worked with somebody, and how you how you brought that client to success, and anything about what that was? And
Yeah, just let me think of a good one to use here. Yeah, I still have a client that she created her own business. She started her own business, had been in business about 10 years, had found really, really good success, was working 60, 70 hours a week. Didn't have a lot of time for family, friends, activities, was feeling pulled in all of these different directions. So she essentially created this monster that was no longer fulfilling and was really taking away from her. So what she had originally intended, she got more so than what she got. But then when she got there, it's kind of like we talked, you had kind of talked about, is sometimes you get there and you just want more and bigger, and you think that that's, so a lot of it, the biggest thing that we worked on with her is that she needed external validation for the quality of the work that she was providing. She needed external validation for how good of a job she did in delivering her service.
From who? From her clients or from
her
anyone?
Clients and her customers. Yep.
Okay.
Or from, she didn't feel, she didn't have that intrinsic knowledge of how good she was. So she always needed more. There was never enough. And then when she would lose a client, it would just nail her, because she viewed that as then I must not be very good at what I do, regardless of all of the success she experienced. So she really had to detach from this constant chase and the growth. She had to reconfigure what her intentions were for her business, detach from this idea that in order to gain, you must feel pain, that you don't have to suffer in order to receive. We had to change a lot of these beliefs that she had in order for her to, what she has now, has created. She still has that business, but she's created something for herself that she's way happier than she was before. She has much more free time than she did before. And the business that she has now kind of extricated herself from, as far as being involved in all of the day-to-day, is more successful now than it was before. So, but it took just a lot of work to get her to detach from a lot of these beliefs and thoughts that she had about what it meant to be successful, not only for herself personally, but how to affect success for her business.
Where did that, it sounds like she almost had some kind of yardstick that this is my measurement for success. Was that something going on for that?
Well, yeah, a lot of this stuff can be very deep rooted right. Things that we experience. So, if you, for example, I was raised in a family with my dad, that it was very expected. What we did, our accomplishments, is what was important. So it wasn't necessarily
your value was on how you produce. Your value was on what you showed.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I had to detach and learn a different way to be of value. And so I had to detach it from what I was accomplishing and move it to who I am as a person.
Okay.
But if I was still attached to that, I probably wouldn't be here, because when I'm coaching somebody, it's not like they're out, carrying my sign that Beth coaches me and I'm so much happier. It has to be, the conversations that we have very confidentially and privately. So this isn't about, a big demonstration of how great I am. It has to be much more internally validated for me.
Right. Which makes perfect sense on that.
Mm-hmm.
So this case study, this client that we're talking about, you're familiar with the scarcity mindset.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right on that. Do you think that was part of the thing that was going on, and that there's some scarcity for her on that?
Yeah, the whole idea around abundance, that the universe is abundant.
Yeah.
I don't think, in fact, it's reminding me of a different client that I had, that she was talking to me about how she was handling her personal finances. And she said, her and her husband would run up their credit card debt, and then something would happen to pay it, that they'd come into this money, whether it's inheritance or something, and it would pay off. They'd get to square one, and then they'd do it again. But then miraculously, money would come and pay it off.
No consequence, right?
The business that they are in is of deep value to our community. And so, but she said to me, we can't keep doing this because we can't rely on this money coming in. And I said, how do you know that?
Right.
How do you know that you can't rely on it?
Right.
It's not that it gives you an excuse to be irresponsible and just with anything, but that abundance does exist. But part of my creating a mindset plan is talking about your relationship with money. How do you feel about money? How were you taught about money? How do you, finances is one of the biggest things that couples argue about, and is pointed at something that can, financial problems causes the marriage to dissolve. Well, cash flow problems can be listed as one of the main causes of business failure. So if you don't understand and have a okay relationship with money, and you're starting a business, that's going to be a real problem for you. So, but if you can frame some of this in terms of abundance, my personal story, when I started my business, I wanted three things. I wanted a part-time job to supplement my income that paid really, really well as I started, and that had something to do with the business that I was launching. I wanted X amount of dollars in my account as a cushion, and I wanted a super cheap office space. Like, I don't know, it's like $50 a month. I want it super cheap. And I had no reason to believe I was going to get any of these three things. And I got all three. Huh. I got the job. In fact, I was going to take a different job that wasn't any of that. And I thought, you know what, I'm just not going to take it. But I ended up getting a job at the SPD, part-time job at the SBDC, consulting business owners when they're starting their businesses. My husband's dad liquidated an investment, and he didn't even know I was starting a business, said, oh, by the way, here's this money that you didn't realize that you had. And then as I was at the SBDC, the landlord said, hey, Beth, do you need an office space? Yeah. Well, do you want to rent space? Sure. How much? How does $50 a month sound? Golden. So
wait, he suggested, or you suggested the 50?
He suggested the 50. I'm in. So all of this stuff happened. But that's, if I'm living off of scarcity, there's no way that I would just say, well, that's a fluke. But these are things that if you understand and believe in abundance, it's like that, and trusting your intuition, all this kind of stuff. The more that you, Sheryl Sandberg, the more you lean into it, the more it starts to happen for you.
So throughout my years as a consultant and executive coach and video production and all the different hats I wear, I've had more than my share of people in the financial industry take a run at me to basically have them. So these are MLMs, multi-level marketing, and they're the Prime Americas of the World Financial, Investors Group in Canada. Well, that's not really quite the same. I'm not singling out any of these. I'm just saying there's this idea is that their model is you sell to your warm audience first, which people you get them to basically give you your money, and then you sell insurance to them and doing that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've heard lots of pitches, presentations, and what I don't get and what I still don't understand is how none of them start with saying, we're going to talk about something and you're going to check out because it's something we don't like. That's money. Because
Yeah.
I know I should spend, I know I should save better. I know I should do better with my investments. I know I should be all that. I know that. I've known that for a while. It's also not how I'm wired, not as an excuse, but it's just not my natural propensity to save. It's kind of like, yeah, things will be okay.
Mhm.
And whenever I'm in a presentation where they're talking about money, I check out.
Yeah.
And I'm not, and I'm just kind of, I'm not there anymore because of all the negative stigma. Well, Noam Chomsky said all money is a stored energy.
Yes. Yes.
Right, like that's we determine that this is worth so many clams and this is
Yep.
worth so many shekels and that kind of
Yep.
stuff, right, on top of that.
Yep.
So but there is a tendency, I think, for many people, and I've just come to accept that if I'm doing it, then at least half the other people are doing it. Like I'm not that special, right? And so there is none of this forewarning people that this is a difficult conversation because we don't have financial literacy. We're not teaching kids financial literacy. And up here in Canada, somebody making $15 an hour can buy a $45,000 car.
Mm.
Because the rules are different for buying a house than buying a car in Canada.
Wow.
And you can make these massive payments, or you can have this massive payments that the likelihood of you actually being able to be good on is there. And then on that, so does this resonate with you about people's negative connotations with money?
Yeah. There's a lot of guilt and shame that people have with money.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of it is just working with people to release that guilt and shame, which it isn't easy, but it's with anything. I mean, money is related to Abraham Maslow's second hierarchy of need. So the only level below that is that of the need for your basic living necessities of food, shelter, water, and clothing.
Yep.
That's it. That need for financial stability is right above that level. So it's a really, really deep-rooted need. And if you feel any amount of uncertainty over your financial future, fear pops right up to protect you from that and keep you safe and keep you stuck.
Right.
Because your ego does not like any kind of uncertainty. And especially if you're starting a business, but anytime there's financial uncertainty, you just want to not even want to acknowledge its existence because you're just so afraid of it. So part of it is just getting the knowledge so that uncertainty comes down and it doesn't seem so fearful to even talk about.
So debunking it, demystifying it, kind of showing things on that. Do you think financial responsibility is a gender thing or a personality thing more so?
I think it's a personality thing. I guess that's my first kind of brush at that it's a personality thing. I mean, part of the issue is that so often the shit that we have and the amount of money in our bank account, that's viewed as how much worth we have as individuals. Yeah. So there is this connection between self-worth and how much you have or how much you make. So if that's what you believe, then if you don't have a lot of stuff, then that's your value, your personal value is going to go down. And I guess then to your point, if men are more responsible, in quotes, for the financial well-being of the family by being the breadwinners, then men are probably more tied to that financial piece than women might be. So it's possible that men are at a disadvantage when it comes to that financial piece, maybe a little bit more so than women, at least as far as the value, how men are valued versus how women are valued tied to financial.
Right. And there is that there is that you know, there is a reason why people drive BMWs and make sure you know about it, right? There is that, and the
Yeah.
and the Rexall, like, you know, it's just like coming into a meeting and you put your keys on the table, knowing full well everyone's going to see the Beamer or
Yeah.
stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So there is that correlation, I think, of our value. What the yardsticks that we've been told in society is that, yeah, or how we define success is
Yeah.
through a monetary lens.
Well, and even just your identity with objects, you know, like I had to recently go through this. I bought my very first vehicle completely on my own without anybody with me, a spouse, a parent, a sibling, did it all by myself in 2016. It's the first time I ever did that. Got the loan by myself, my own income, completely by myself. And I was really proud of that. Like, I felt empowered walking into that dealership, doing the test drive, saying, yep, I'm going to buy it. And then I bought it. Well, COVID, my car is sitting in my garage. The only time I really drive it is to my local grocery store and back. That's it. So it's paid off. And so it's money just sitting out there in the garage, paying insurance on it, eventual maintenance, and it's depreciating in value.
Right.
I know I finally come to terms that I'm ready to sell it, but 3 months ago, the thought of selling it was like, oh, I mean, I name my cars. It's Dwight. It's Dwight the White Jeep. I love Dwight. But I had to really disidentify, if that's a word, unidentify with that vehicle. I had to say, instead of it being my car, my vehicle, my Dwight, I had to reframe it as the piece of machinery that gets me to the grocery store and back. That's it. Because when it was mine, I could experience loss. Whenever you identify something as yours, if it goes away, you experience loss.
That's so true.
But if it's just a piece of something that's not mine, it's just something. If it goes away, I don't experience any loss. So I had to do that.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking, you know, it's like I got in my car yesterday for the first time, and there's just like, and it occurred to me to look at the gas gauge, and it was like above the E, above the F.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Yeah. So around that, it's just like, when the hell did I gas up last, right?
Right.
And it hadn't been that long, but I'm just not in my vehicle. But yeah, I wonder. So there's this concept of this idea that when cars really do become automated, they've called that. So a car will show up, take you where you need to go, and then it will, and then it will return back to what they're suggesting is a hive. So the place where they all can stack and they can all go and they're just needed on, that type of thing. If that was out today, I would think that with where we're at, with how often we drive and everything on top of that, that would be like, why would I need that? Because I have a Lexus.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, I love my car. I love it's a hybrid. I love that. But the fact is that I barely drive it. And I looked at him going, oh my God, it's dirty. Yeah. Like the outside of it, it was covered in mud, because keeping your car clean at this time of year, as you know, is really hard. It's almost like you're just throwing money away by keep washing it, especially if the temperature fluctuates. It's perfect when it's minus 30, because then it stays clean because everything's frozen, right? But yeah, there's this whole redefinition of what and I think that, you know, the weird sort of benefits of COVID. Like there are weird benefits that we had. Like, for example, I never would have met you. I wouldn't know Pat. I wouldn't know Scott. I wouldn't know all the other people that come to my shows on a regular basis. My life is infinitely more rich because of this opportunity came here on that, right? Just like an opportunity to go, what is my relationship with my vehicle, and how much of that is a status for me?
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a 2014 Jeep. I mean, it's nothing fancy, but it was the first, you know, it kind of represented freedom for me, you know, personal freedom, financial freedom. That's what it really represented to me. And I had to really let go of that.
Yeah, and especially because of doing it on your own, and then I don't know if there's being a woman, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, totally.
Right.
Totally. Yep.
Right.
Yep. It was incredibly empowering.
Very cool. any other questions that we have before I continue to monopolize? Because you know I will. Okay, just interrupt me if you do. So we're going to continue. So, back to women, helping women. So you'd mentioned that one of the things you have to cover, you mentioned two things that you have to talk about is the concept that they can start a business and then finding the money.
Yeah.
Did I get that right? I seem to have got the wrong one.
It's for women, it's overcoming their own self-doubt and access to financing.
Okay.
So that's a piece that we haven't really talked about much yet.
Okay,
is women's access to financing at financial institutions. Yeah. Yeah.
So that actually was my question on that is there inherently seen that women are a greater risk than men within the banking industry?
So with anything, lenders, their decisions are, commercial lenders, let me back up. Lenders, when they make a decision about a loan, it's based 100% on an assessment of risk. So that's risk that the loan isn't going to get repaid, or risk that then if the loan doesn't get repaid and it goes through bankruptcy, well, that's risking that lender's reputation as a good lender.
Okay.
So it's all based on risk. Well, if there isn't a lot of
proof
history for that particular lender to look back on, like all these successful women business owners, is that going to play into it? Well, of course it is. So it's going to create more uncertainty, which fires up fear to protect somebody from that. So I was a lender, and, I am a feminist. I am fully aware of all of these issues. And I had to check myself as I was making decisions about loans. I had to do it. So if I'm doing it, that it's happening everywhere. So it's an acknowledge, you just have to be aware of it. As lenders, we have to be aware of that bias that we all have. And then to do something to remediate it. And it's women, it's people of color, it's people if English is a second language. If you're not a healthy, wealthy white man, there's going to be some disadvantage that you're going to have when you go to access financing. So commercial lending is way more of an art than a science. It is not like getting a house loan. It is not like getting a car loan. It's not that you fill these boxes and it's either a green light or a red light. You could walk into a bank, a financial institution, sit with one lender, pitch your idea, give them your business plan and your financial statements, and they could say no. You could walk out of their office, walk down the hall, walk into the next office, do the exact same thing, exact same presentation, and a lender could say yes. So there's yes, there are basic boxes that you need to fit in. But if a lender can justify their decision, if they can justify their decision and get it approved, get somebody to sign off on these exceptions, maybe if it doesn't fit perfectly in the box, you can get, that's why you can go to different financial institutions, get turned down here, you get turned down 5 times. But if you get the right lender that's willing to take a risk on you, you could get it funded. I funded when I was at the bank, I funded a retail shop for somebody that practiced and gave services and products for earthbound religions or earth-based religions. So a wonderful person, great business idea. I don't know many other lenders that would have sat with her to talk to that would have, had that open mind to, we're here in North Central or West Central Wisconsin, in the land of a lot of Lutherans and a lot of Catholics. And so to have this kind of a store pop up, it's owned by a woman who didn't have any business experience. And now she's in business, she's doing great, everything's fine. But based on what I saw, I probably could have denied it. I could have made a justification to deny it, but I believed in her, and so I wanted to fund it. And so I did.
Yeah. Do you advise your clients at all to how to win over lenders?
What I try to do is I try to nail out and just shoot as many holes as possible into their loan requests as I can. Just rip it apart as much as I can so they can see what they need to prepare for. So I try to just expose everything. It's like, I don't know if anybody in the call knows who Eminem is, that rapper, and how, you know, on is it 8 Mile, his movie 8 Mile, where there's a rap battle and when he goes to the final one, you know, he just says like, this is all the stuff that I know you're going to rip apart on me. And he knows all of this stuff. Well, if you know it ahead of time, then what it does is you put that out there, either you remedy it or you put it out there. So then the lender isn't sitting across the desk from you thinking, well, I wonder about this. This could be something that could mess it up. This person's already told me it. She knows this. She already knows what the risks are. I'm not going to tell her anything that's going to surprise her.
Right.
So it's really about positioning people that way to know exactly where are the risks, where are the holes, let's work to fill it, or know how to mitigate it enough that your lender isn't going to freak out about it.
You know, it's interesting because what I advise people on a regular basis, entrepreneurs and small businesses, is that if you know an objection is coming your way, if you know eventually there's an objection and you don't get in front of it, that's your problem.
Yeah.
That's your problem. That's not, you know, so the example I like to use with this is I was talking to a guy at a networking event back before we were all potential serial killers. And we were talking and his side hustle was timeshares on cruise ships.
Oh, gosh.
Right. Yeah. Well, this is before COVID was ever right. So it was just like, you know, and it was kind of interesting going, oh, I didn't know. Like as soon as I was saying I didn't know that happened, I'm going, well, of course why couldn't that happen? Why wouldn't it be? Because they don't want to waste, you know, if that's going to get people in the cabins, that's far more desirable than having that cabin sit, right? So it makes sense. I'd never heard of it before. So I said to him, I said, well, what's your objection that you get from people? What did people say? Without a moment of thinking of it, what came out of his mouth immediately was people eventually say it's too good to be true. I said, well, why aren't you leading with that? Why aren't you dealing with that objection? He goes, well, what does that mean? I said, well, I don't know what it means, but it could look something like this. I want to tell you about something and, you know, or is it be like, so what do you do? I'll go, yeah, I'd love to tell you, but people say it's too good to be true. Well, what is it? Well, okay, I'll tell you, but you know, you're probably going to say that. And he says, well, I provide, you know, we have connections with cruise ships where you pay 70% less. That's too good to be true. See, I told you. You got ahead of the objection, and basically now people are not going to self-eject. The other thing that I find, I learned this a few years ago, and I find that people don't know, or they seem to be surprised by this information, and that is your FAQs on your website are all about what people are going to self-eject for. That's why you put them there. Because you know, it's like, does it have a warranty? How long does it get set up? How soon can I get the results? These are the questions that people are gonna, you haven't answered that. So then basically you self-eject from the conversation or from the pursuit of it because it hasn't been addressed on that. So in many ways, what you're saying is you have to, this is what they're going to be looking for. This is what they're going to find. If I see it, it's probably they're going to ask it. So we have to get in front of that. So the value you really bring is really preparing them for those objections.
Right. Yep. If a lender is going to base their decision on risk is associated with fear. How do you control fear? By making things more certain. So it's my job to make a request as certain as possible, so it seems less risky and the lender's going to be less fearful to then approve it.
I would also see that, you know, I believe with a template, with how you would do that, if you say this is how we address that, because I help with people with fear on a regular basis, right? So that's I'm not saying it's a formula, but I'm saying is that once you understand how that basically shapes people, but what I wouldn't have would be the experience of being on the other side of the table with all those loan requests and saying, oh, I've seen this before, or this is, you can expect that they're going to say this and that kind of stuff. So I think what was I doing recently? Oh, I had to ask my bank I have a leak in my flat roof that shouldn't be there. It's not good. And I was looking at the bank and I didn't know how to ask the question for the bank helping me out with this. And I funneled through the question. I explained what the problem was, and the person said, "Oh, you're looking for a loan." I was just like, I don't even know what the language is. I don't even know how, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't even know what the language means.
Yep.
Like I do many things well. That's not one of them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So so it's this idea of where do we get to go ask our stupid questions?
Well, totally. Yeah.
Right.
Because I mean, the thing is that you want to show your lender that you know what you're talking about.
Right.
So you don't want to ask a stupid question. What a stupid question. Ask me that.
Yeah.
So then I can prep you for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is to prep for the applicant. This is what the process is going to look like. This is probably what they're going to ask for in terms of collateral, the stuff you're going to have to pledge. This is what a normal rate would look like. This is what a normal repayment term would look like. If you're getting, they can give me their commitment letters and say, hey, look at this. Is this normal? Is this rate normal? Are these fees normal? And I can look at it and say, this is a bunch of bullshit.
Right.
Or I can say, this is a great offer. You should take it.
Right. And in that case, you're acting as a trusted advisor because you've been on the inside, you've been on the other side of the table to say, this is how you prepare for that. And this is how you actually navigate that.
Yep.
And part of that is knowing the language.
Yeah.
You just actually said something I've never heard before, and that is a pledge.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And that could be just my pure ignorance, or that could be a cultural thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah.
Well, because Americans say something that Canadians don't, and that is, I appreciate you. People have said that to me, and I'm going, oh,
yeah.
I've never heard. Like, I appreciate what you do. I'm grateful, but not I appreciate you.
Yeah.
And I heard it, and I'm thinking, thank you. I don't know what that means. Like, that's kind of right. But pledge would be one of those things. If I go in going,
yeah, because a lender would say, what collateral do you have to pledge?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that would be an example of going into a meeting and then going, okay, I don't know what that means.
Well,
right?
And here's the slice of it that makes it particularly challenging for women. Women are much more inclined to bootstrap, which means to just basically try to self-finance your project, or to ask friends and family for assistance. But bootstrapping is by far more likely for a woman to do than a man to do.
Really?
Yeah. Yep.
Huh.
Because men feel more empowered to go ask for a loan when the guy sitting across the desk from him looks exactly like him.
Yeah.
So a lot of this is just, it's empowering women to say, yes, you can get a loan, and this is how you do it. And, I'll connect you with a friendly lender that I know that is willing. I mean, I call lenders ahead of time and say, hey, this is the kind of project that I'm working on. Is this something you think you'd be able to fund? Rather than running the risk of sitting in front of a lender who has zero interest, potentially zero ability to even help you. Because you don't want to get told no. I mean,
right.
This is something that sometimes people have put years into, and then they need to get a loan to get it started. Imagine that a year of your life that you've been working on this, and then you sit in front of a lender's desk and they say, nope, sorry, I can't give you a loan. I mean, that can be devastating.
Yeah.
It can be just devastating for women.
Especially if it's like people have actually said to me, have you ever thought about counseling? Yeah, I had a counselor once and it didn't work. They were awful. Yeah. And I'm going, okay, if you brought your transmission in to get fixed and the mechanic didn't do the job, does that mean you never fix your transmission, or you just don't go back to the mechanic? And there's this idea of if I seek help and it doesn't work, they're all going to be like that. I'm going, no, we're flawed like everyone else. There's in some ways psychologists might be a bit more messed up than the rest of them. That's those who can't teach or whatever it is. But it's that kind of, and so not knowing why it went off the rails, or if that was even a reasonable for it not to be approved, and to be able to say, no, that person had an axe to grind. They were not in a good, for whatever on that, and that's not representational. How they acted or how they did that was not representational of how it normally goes. There's something else going on.
Right.
Cool.
Right. Yep, exactly.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've got more questions. So if you're not going to ask, I encourage you to ask them. And because I have one, we have about 13 more minutes, and going once, going twice. Yay, I get to talk some more. Okay, so Beth, you dropped the F word, and we need to talk about it.
I dropped the F word.
You dropped the F word. Feminist.
Oh, feminist. That one.
So feminist is one of those words that is something that, as and I'll be honest, as a man, I do have this tendency to want to kind of like create some distance on that, because my gender has not been appreciated, just because I have a Y chromosome and then all that stuff and on that. So you don't, I would like a definition as to what a feminist means to you, because you do not represent as what I would say is more within the norm of a feminist.
Well, if I could ask you, what do you usually see?
I see a correlation often with sexual identity and sexual preference, being with the angry feminists are usually often, more than often than not, have a different, they're not playing on this, they play with the same team as opposed to the other team, so they're more gay than heterosexual. And these are the ones that are quite out there. There's that correlation. There's also the suggestion that because my gender has done so much bad, we're of no use to society, because we're the ones that caused all the problems and that kind of stuff. And it's this wide sweeping statements that come with that. And it doesn't, I find the ones that I feel the need to have distance from are ones that I can't have conversations with.
Yeah. Yep.
They've kind of, so the angry feminist, the pissed off feminist has already made their mind up, and there's no on that. So that's, and I think,
that's
I think the term feminist has got a bad rap by the ones that are really the extreme on there. But the original term was really about empowering women for that, and on that. But it seems to have been at the cost of men at times for some certain part of that demographic.
Yeah. Yep. You're not the, it reminds me of, there's an organization that I'm a member of, and it helps to empower women as they're going through divorces, and their target market is to like, if their target market is in a very large community in Wisconsin, where the husband is the primary, close to 7-figure wage earner, and they're getting a divorce, and perhaps the wife has had no interactions with the finance, but really to help her get fair treatment through the divorce. And as I was getting to know this organization, every time she'd get on to talk, she would say, the first thing I'm going to say is that I don't hate men. Like, I don't hate men. I love men. This isn't about bashing men. I don't hate men. And it used to kind of like irk me that
she had to qualify that to be
that.
In the first place.
Right.
It's like, why do we have to say Black Lives Matter in the first place?
Right. Yes. Yeah. So it just, like, for me, being a feminist means that women should have access to all the things that all human beings have access to, just as much access and equal treatment. That's what to me being a feminist is about. I've learned a lot about the history of women and how the different aspects that culture has positioned women throughout the years of, you even alluded to, not being able to say no to your husband whose sexual advances in Canada from 1984. So, there's to me, it's an acknowledgement of where things have been for women in the past, the struggles that we still see now. But the biggest thing that I think I've learned from Black Lives Matter, and from my position as a woman, is to not call people out. That when you see something or you hear something that is harmful, that you don't get in a position where you're standing on your soapbox and wagging your finger and calling them out and trying to expose them. You call people into conversation about it. Because that's when I think you can really affect change, is if you're calling people in to talk about it rather than trying to call somebody out on it. So, you know, I'm not going to judge how people do their feminism. Like, do it how you want to do it. What I choose to do is try to call people in and bring light to things that I see, and the way I can affect it, the way I can affect women having less access to financing than men do, is by empowering them with the knowledge. And it's not by saying that lenders are bad. It's not saying that the financial institutions are evil and corrupt institutions. I'm not saying all of that. I'm saying that I have the information to help affect this population and give them the inside scoop to help them have equal access, because there are those inherent biases that are preventing women from just as much access as men.
So in some ways, in many ways, it's leveling the playing field.
Totally.
Right.
Totally.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting because there was a landmark case in the province of British Columbia a while ago that was with the, we have a history of not honoring our treaties for the Indigenous people here. And, you know, we put them on reserves. We have put them on reserves, and we've done many, many things that have not been good, that we look back and go, that was god awful. And it really was. And where was I going with this? I was talking about, so this landmark case where the government was successfully sued because they were not honoring the treaty rights that were like 100 and 200 years old and whatnot. And it's always deferral. And what my professor had told me when he talked about this is that it's not all of a sudden that the white society decided to be more sympathetic towards the Indigenous cause. It wasn't that. It was just they got white lawyers, and they basically they figured out how to use the system and hold the system accountable. And it was like, you know, it's kind of like, we're not treating them well. Well, that doesn't go very far. It's just like, oh, we're gonna, this is our standards, and we have to live to our own standards. So they learned how to use the system within that, and that's kind of what it sounds like is that you're demystifying it and saying to women, you have to know how to navigate it.
Yep.
And you have to know the pitfalls that you're going to run into, and how to have that. So it's not about the institution that doesn't want to give you money. It's just that they have a way they look at it, and you have to meet them as opposed to expect they're going to come to you.
Well, this is one of the biggest impacts that I try to make on my clients when I coach them is, what can you control? Because I can spend a lot of time trying to have impact on things outside of me, and try to impact on people that I don't have control over. So what is it that I can control? And what I can control, what I can help these women control, is their application. Like that's what I can help them control. So it's how I approach coaching. It's how I approach my own life, is that I try not to spend a lot of time thinking about what other people are doing and how much it pisses me off and how I think it's so wrong, and I'm just getting angry and pissed off about something that I have no way of ever affecting.
Right.
I'm going to be consistently and constantly pissed off about this thing. So I don't spend a lot of time on that. I spend a lot of time thinking about where can I make an impact? How can I affect it? And most often it's stuff that I do internally. Mary Jo Pulio she's an author, podcaster, writer, PhD. I think she's brilliant. And, you know, I think I know some stuff about metaphysical. She is like brilliant with this kind of stuff. And her whole philosophy is that the more you change, when you change on the inside, everything outside of you changes.
Yeah.
So the way that you can affect control on things that are outside of you is by doing the work inside. But then if you take 100% responsibility for your life, guess what you can't do? You can't blame anyone.
Right.
You are
Right.
done blaming. Once you
That's
take
right.
control over your life, you're done blaming. And a lot of people love to blame.
Yeah, well, it's this the I movement. It's and like the individual, which is really doubtful if we ever had that. But yeah, it's that focus, that predominant focus on it's never my fault, and always externally and looking internally from that. I'm noticing the time. We're coming to the end. Did you want to have another thought with that before I wrap up our Here to There show for today?
That whatever thought that was just completely slipped on my mind. So I'm
Okay.
good. I
Okay.
just shut off.
Yeah, I do want to actually talk about something that I have coming up on Wednesday. I'm not going to be showing all my webinars this week, but this is something I do want to show. And on Wednesday, there's a new segment. Don't need to see that. Good. I have a new segment called the Connect and Learn Networking event. This has been probably a couple months in the making. And my guest presenter, my guest host is Colin Christopher, who has actually been a speaker on last week. He was actually on the Here to There show because we didn't have a show on Friday. So I was just more of a kind of conversation. But we are doing this on Friday at on Wednesday at 5 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. So if you're on the East Coast, that's going to be 7 o'clock your time. And if you're on the West Coast, it's 4 o'clock your time on that. And there's limited seats, and it's called Connect and Learn because we're going to be doing a teaching component of it, and then there's going to be networking, and we're figuring it out. And we have 3 dates set for the the next 3 Wednesdays. I can't recall what they are. And so, yeah, if you're looking to network, if you're looking to come and learn something, please come and attend this. And I just want to thank Beth for being part of the show today. I greatly appreciate that. And any last words before we go? Anything, a parting thought that you want to leave with the audience?
No, I'm just so grateful to have the chance to talk. As a coach, I do so much asking questions that I don't have many opportunities to talk about stuff that's in my own head. So I appreciate the opportunity, and I hope everybody found it of benefit. And if you can join me on Friday for the Creating a Mindset Plan for Your Business, that'd be stellar.
It's going to be outstanding information. So Beth, thank you very much. I'm going to get you to hold on. And as I said, everyone else, you don't have to leave your house, but you can't stay in this room. So get other people to sign off, and we're going to do that.